Good morning, and I hope this stretch of preparation has treated you with more clarity than exhaustion lately. I know the weight you are carrying right now, an examination that does not just test what you know, it tests who you are willing to become over the coming months. Today on the Sociology Desk, issue 68, we are working with two stories that look like ordinary news but are, underneath, pure examination material. One is about who the law allows to call themselves transgender. The other is about an income ceiling that has quietly become the legal boundary of the Indian middle class. Let us get into both properly, the way a topper would. Let us start with a case sitting right now before India's Supreme Court. Parliament passed an amendment in 2026 that narrows the legal definition of who can be certified as transgender. Petitioners have challenged it, and the challenge sits exactly inside your Paper 1 syllabus, under Stratification and Mobility, the subunit on equality, inequality, hierarchy, and exclusion. Now, why should you care about a proviso in a section number? Because this is precisely the kind of event that separates a candidate who can sync a legal development with a theoretical concept from a candidate who can only describe what happened. The first kind of candidate becomes a topper. The second kind writes a good general knowledge answer and gets a 14. The first idea you must anchor this answer on is constitutional morality, a phrase Dr. Ambedkar used before the Constituent Assembly. In simple language, it means that a constitution's values, equality, dignity, liberty, must be honored in spirit, even when the popular mood of the day runs against them. Ambedkar was blunt about this. He said Indian society had not yet absorbed democratic values, so constitutional morality had to be cultivated deliberately, not assumed. Now, here is the twist in this current case. Both the government's lawyers and the petitioners are quoting Ambedkar to argue opposite things. The government says courts must respect what parliament legislates. The petitioners say constitutional morality exists exactly to protect a minority group when parliament's mood turns against it. You must show the examiner you understand this is a genuine, two-sided debate inside Ambedkar's own idea, not just a slogan you are dropping in. Add two more precise tools. Nancy Fraser argues that justice has two separate dimensions: redistribution of resources and recognition of identity. And fixing one does not automatically fix the other. When the law narrows who counts as transgender, that is a recognition injury, not a resource injury. And you must name it as such. Then bring in Robert Merton's distinction between manifest and latent function. The manifest or stated function of this proviso is administrative clarity, making welfare delivery simpler. But the latent function, the hidden and more consequential effect, is that people whose self-identity does not fit the new categories lose legal protection altogether. An answer that only describes the news event stays at manifest function. An answer that surfaces the latent function is what moves you from a 14 to an 18. Let me give you one formulation you can reproduce almost directly in your answer sheet. Ambedkar argued that constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment. It must be cultivated because a society used to hierarchy does not spontaneously produce democratic values. Write a version of that sentence into your answer. Attribute it correctly to Ambedkar and you have already signaled to the examiner that you know this is not a textbook definition. It is a working argument with a history behind it. Now let me speak to you as an examiner would. A candidate scoring around 14 out of 20 on this question opens by describing the Transgender Persons Amendment Act in detail, spends half the answer narrating the court case, and mentions Ambedkar's name once without explaining what constitutional morality actually means. A candidate scoring 18 or 19 does something completely different. That candidate opens with a structural claim, something like, legal classification is itself a form of stratification, independent of who owns what. Then names the concept exactly: constitutional morality, misrecognition, latent function, not loosely, but with correct attribution. The event, the actual amendment, and the court case appears in only 1 or 2 sentences, used as evidence, not as the story. Then the candidate adds a counter perspective. Here, that would be the tension inside Ambedkar's own idea, or Fraser's point that recognition politics can be reversed by the same legislature that once granted it. And the answer closes by generalizing outward, saying something about how the state's power to classify people is itself a stratifying force. Remember this refrain, because I will repeat it every single day. The current event is your evidence. The theory is your destination. Here is a question you should sit with. In light of the Supreme Court's examination of the Transgender Persons Amendment Act 2026, critically examine Nancy Fraser's distinction between recognition and redistribution as dimensions of justice. Try writing this in the 250-word format before you move on to the next story. Our second story today. The Supreme Court has held that the Rs 8 lakh annual income ceiling for the economically weaker sections quota is, in the court's words, prima facie reasonable. This sits inside Paper 2 under social classes in India, specifically the middle classes in India. Notice what has happened here. An administrative number, a ceiling meant to identify economic backwardness, has quietly become the state's legal definition of where the Indian middle class ends. That is a much richer claim than simply reporting the court's ruling, and it is the claim your answer must make. Andre Beteille's contribution here is precise. He argued that India's middle class occupies its position through education and salaried employment, not through ownership of productive capital, which makes it a different object of analysis from the bourgeoisie in the classical Marxian sense. That is exactly why the state finds it convenient to use an income number as its proxy for class eligibility. Income is easy to measure, status and ownership are not. Now bring in the classic pairing that appears almost every single year in this paper: Marx versus Weber on stratification. Max Weber separates class, your market situation and life chances, determined by income, from status, your social honor, which can operate completely independently of income. Two families earning the exact same salary can carry very different social capital depending on their caste location. And an income ceiling cannot see that difference at all. Karl Marx pushes the critique further, insisting that class is defined by your relation to the means of production, ownership and control, not by what you happen to earn in a given year. So an income threshold, however carefully set, leaves the deeper question of who owns capital and land completely unexamined. If you can hold all three thinkers, Beteille, Weber, and Marx, in the same paragraph without confusing them, you are already writing an 18-mark answer. Here is your reproducible formulation. Beteille observed that India's middle class occupies its position through education and salaried employment, rather than through ownership of capital, making it distinct from a bourgeoisie in the classical sense. That single sentence, correctly attributed, tells the examiner you have read Beteille specifically on the Indian middle class, not just generic stratification theory. Once again, think like the examiner. A 14-mark answer here explains what the economically weaker sections quota is, states the rupees 8 lakh figure, and says reservation is a contested topic in India. An 18 or 19-mark answer moves in sequence Beteille to explain why income became the chosen proxy, Weber to expose what that proxy misses about status and caste, and Marx to expose what it misses about ownership. The event, the court's phrase, Prima Facie reasonable, gets one sentence, used as evidence that the debate remains legally unsettled. Then the answer closes by naming the gap directly. What the ceiling achieves administratively, it may fail to achieve structurally. That closing sentence is what a topper writes, and an average candidate does not even think to write. The current event is your evidence. The theory is your destination. Your practice question here: how do Marx and Weber differ in their understanding of class formation in contemporary India? Illustrate with reference to income-based reservation criteria. Notice, this is a comparative question. Both thinkers must get equal, precise treatment, and the illustration must stay brief. Let us bring it together quickly. First, legal classification. Deciding who counts as what is itself a form of stratification independent of resource distribution. Second, Ambedkar's constitutional morality can be used by both a government and its challengers. So handle it as a genuine debate, not a slogan. Third, an income ceiling can never fully capture status closure through caste or ownership of the means of production, which is why Beteille, Weber, and Marx must all appear together on the middle class question. Fourth, always name the exact concept and the exact thinker, never one without the other. And fifth, the rule that governs every single answer you write for this optional. The current event is your evidence, the theory is your destination. That is today's brief. I know the preparation for this optional can feel long and some days quietly draining. And the only real secret anyone can offer you is that showing up for one more day consistently is what eventually separates a selection from a near miss. If you want the complete answer blocks, the model answers, and the flashcards behind everything we discussed today, drop your email in the comments or write to us at team@upscdesk.com and we will share the subscription details. I will see you tomorrow with the next story and the next set of thinkers you need to make your own.